Hello, welcome to Chapter 4 of Fundamentals of Financial Accounting. Before I proceed with this chapter, I'll ask you to log in to SFU Canvas and download a blank set of notes so that you may follow along. The accounting cycle is the process by which companies produce their financial statements and update their financial records for a specific period of time. The steps to the accounting cycle are shown below. We have covered the first 6 steps already. In this chapter, we will learn about closing entries and the post-closing trial balance, which are the final 2 steps of the accounting cycle. Looking at the arrow below, it shows that the accounting cycle is an ongoing process. One quarter year ends and the next one begins immediately after. So the main idea behind this 8-step process and the arrow, which you see going from step 8 all the way back to step 1. The idea is to illustrate that accounting is an ongoing process. So looking at what we've done so far, we have covered the first 5 steps of this cycle. And in this chapter, we will be going over the final 3 steps. 6, preparing the financial statements. 7, journalizing and posting closing entries. And 8, preparing the post-closing trial balance. To help us perform these last 3 steps, we will be once again looking at something which starts off as a trial balance and ends up as a worksheet. So we've kind of been introduced to this document already, and you will see as we continue with these notes exactly what it is. But a worksheet is a document with many columns which is used by accountants to summarize data for the financial statements. In the modern age, this would usually be an Excel spreadsheet as opposed to work done on paper. So we're going to go back to our trusty example of the SFU bookstore. And recall that we first looked at the bookstore trial balance in Chapter 2 and the adjusted trial balance in Chapter 3. In Chapter 4, we will be adding some new elements to the process to demonstrate the preparation and use of the worksheet. So you see the top of the worksheet at the bottom here. We'll have a full look in a moment. The first observable difference between the bookstore's adjusted trial balance and its worksheet is the heading at the top. Note that the exhibit below is correctly labeled as accounting worksheet and it reports a period. In this case, a quarter, as opposed to a date with a trial balance. Also note that there are 2 additional sections on the right. There's going to be an income statement and balance sheet. And note that both of these have columns for debit and credit entries, which are used by accountants to help prepare financial statements. So we will come back to this page to fill in the items in a little while. So as I scroll down, you will notice that we have covered some elements of the worksheet already. We have covered the trial balance, and since the trial balance and worksheet both evolve through the accounting cycle, which you saw above with the 8 steps, we will cover the first steps of the worksheet briefly as a refresher before moving on to the new steps. So if you have a look at the first column here on the left, you see the unadjusted trial balance, which is what we started this process with. You have accounts, starting with assets, going down to liabilities, to equity, and then finally the items on the income statement, revenues and expenses. And we have our accounts in their natural states. We have assets with their debit balances. We have liabilities and equity with their credit balances. Revenue with credits, and also expenses with their debits. But the main thing here is debits equal credit. Then we have the three adjusting entries that we saw in the last chapter. And then we add across to get the adjusted trial balance. And once again, debits equal credits. And these last two columns are what make this an accounting worksheet. The idea here is that we're moving from numbers to financial statement. So you're working towards building your income statement and your balance sheet. Hence why it's called an accounting worksheet. So this is a process to producing the worksheet, and we'll go through these steps. We start by printing the account titles in the first column and the unadjusted ending balances from the ledger in the trial balance column of the worksheet. We add straight down and we total both the debit and credit columns, and we hope that they are equal. Step 2, we enter in our adjusting entries in the adjustment columns, and once again we total the amount. Again, debit should equal credit. Step 3, we compute each account adjusted trial balance by adding the adjustment to the trial balance figures. And then we enter the adjusted totals in the adjusted trial balance columns. So these three steps we should be familiar with from previous chapters. Step 4 is the first new process that we're adding here in this chapter. We're going to extend or transfer revenue and expense amounts from the adjusted trial balance to the income statement columns. So recall that revenue and expense amounts were at the bottom of your worksheet. So all you're doing is going from column 3, taking the numbers and putting them into column 4, which is your income statement column. And similarly, we'll be extending the asset, liability, and equity amounts to the balance sheet columns. So this will be, once again, numbers from column 3 now being pushed or copied into column 5. And the balance sheet item will be at the top, at the first half of your worksheet. And finally, for step 4, we're going to total the statement columns. So add up your debits on the income statement, add up your credits, and do the same thing for your balance sheet. Step 5, compute net income or net loss in the income statement. Add net income as a credit on the balance sheet, and net loss is a debit. So you're essentially looking at your income statement and determining if the revenues, which are credits, are more than the debits, which are your expenses. And if you end up with a stronger credit, which means a credit balance, at the bottom, it's a net profit, and it gets added as a credit to the balance sheet. If you end up with a debit balance, it's a net loss, which gets added as a debit on the balance sheet. So in our exhibit on the previous page, we saw that the first 3 steps have already been completed. We can now complete the 4th step, transferring balances from the adjusted trial balance columns to the statement columns. Once this is done, we can add up the income statement and balance sheet. Recall that net income or loss is equal to revenues minus expenses. In our worksheet, we have revenues as credits and expenses as debits. Remember from step 5 that we must add net income as a credit or net loss as a debit to our balance sheet columns. Why? Because the net income or loss is added to the retained earnings and is necessary to make debit equal credits on our balance sheet. So I'm going to scroll back up here And I'll show you one quick balance transfer so you can see what I mean, and then you may continue filling in column 4 and 5 income statement balance sheet on your own, and we'll cover that in the next video. So the one I'm going to fill in is just the service revenue in column 4, which is your income statement column. So we had service revenue of 10, then we had an adjustment of 5 credit, giving us an adjusted trial balance of 15. So to fill it in, we just go straight to our income statement, credit side. We're copying the credit balance from column 3 into the credit column of column 4. And here I go. I put down 15, and that's just how easy to process it. You're simply taking numbers from column 3 and putting them into the right spots in column 4 and 5. So have a crack at this, and I will see you in the next video.